We are live on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm here with my good friend Nathan. How you doing, brother?
Hello. I'm good. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
cool.
feeling good.
Just before we went live, Nathan mentioned that this was his first words for the day when we had just spoken 30 seconds ago. Um, I actually just wanted to say that that's one of my favorite things. There's a time in my life, it never happens anymore because I've got family all over the place. But one of my favorite things was to not talk for a couple of days.
Hmm.
And then even the sound of going like would suddenly be very striking to me. Like I'd be like, oh
Hmm.
shit, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something very special about the first words of a day or the first words after a period of silence. So I appreciate that you're coming on to share those first words with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always quite a surprise to see what the words will be doing today. What the voice will be doing, and yeah, it's the same this morning. Like, is it going to be a good day for words, or am I going to be all jumbled? To be honest, right now it
Yeah,
feels a bit of both.
yeah, totally, man. Jumble days are actually a real thing for me as well. I'll actually just be like, okay, this is a day where things are just like, what do you call it? Like the words aren't coming out in the right order. So just know that, right? It means that I just know that that day is going to be a funny day for words, that it's going to be a funny day for ideas, and things are probably going to be a little stuffy at points, but that's all right.
Mm. Just on that morning time, um, it's a beautiful thought that has stayed with me since I heard it from the wonderful poet David White, and he would say that there's a very important time, at the beginning of a day, and he was speaking
Totally.
about men, and he said that for men in particular, they must have a place where they can go, where they forget who they are, and they forget their name, and they forget that they have a family, they forget that they're married, and they forget that they're a man, and that they can just go dark, completely dark, just for a moment, and forget it all. And yeah, I've really been with that since I heard it, and really value those moments, which oftentimes are just glimpses, but can come most easily, I find, in first thing in the morning.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me as well. It depends on the day here, but there's sometimes where I'll wake up around 45 minutes before everyone else just to ride that silent space, man. Like
Mm.
it's like that feeling that you just described of not knowing who one is like one of my favorite spaces in the world. And
Mm.
I think that honestly, that's why I enjoy psychedelics and deep meditation experiences and tantric sexual experiences where you lose your sense of self as well. It's all kind of the same thing. It's going back to the primordial soup, and that's a place
Mm.
that I very much enjoy being. And not only enjoy being, it feels like it's like being cast into the fire if you were a sword, being put back
Mm.
into the fire. And then
Mm.
when you come back out of that silent, unknowing space, you are coming back reformed. There's something about that process of letting go of who one is to become nothing and then to become something new. And that process being definitely an ever going, forever process as well.
Mm.
Um, yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Um, Nathan and I just got to spend New Year's together at a very beautiful celebration. It was a very beautiful festival called Castle Drumming. And that whole experience was a very, very cool way to kick off the new year for me. How are you feeling post festival?
I, I once again feel the potency of spending that time in that environment. And that was the second time that I'd been. The first time last year, I had just left with a backpack and was on my
Mm,
way opening up into a great adventure. But I'd never been to a festival before. That was the very first time. And now, 1 year later, returning was beautiful to see myself and see my watch my human after a year of deep nature connection and slowness and realigning to the rhythms of nature. It's a beautiful place there, and lots of beautiful people, lots of energy, lots and lots of energy
Mm,
swirling around, and it seems potent to have such a big fire on New Year's Eve to just throw all of that energy in. And what I really enjoyed was watching and riding the waves of energy throughout the different days of the festival,
mhm,
and just taking the opportunity to bask in the potency of that transition to really create some intention in the ceremony
mhm.
of it all.
And you led a workshop that was about naming your year, correct? Did you
Mm.
maybe give a little story around how that came to be last year and how it formed this year?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I first encountered this process a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Um, a man named Trevor Boehm who does work with men. He's written a book called Man Uncivilized, and he came into our men's group, which was online, and shared this practice. It was one of the things that he shared was about naming your year, and yeah, it really struck me. And that year, I named my year that was to come, and for whatever reason, the name that hit me that first time was the year of extraordinary effort, and that year ended when I ran a men's event for 100 men in Sydney, and it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And when that finished and I went home, went to sleep, I woke up in the middle of the night with great stomach pain, and I was walking to
Mm,
the toilet and collapsed, passed out, and crashed through the plaster wall of the bedroom. Woke up with plaster in my hair and a busted knee, and that was how I finished that year.
shit.
And so, and so, on reflection, when I was doing the process again for the following year, I looked back on the year and I had a chuckle to myself because it wasn't the year of extraordinary effort with adequate rest. It was the year of extraordinary effort, right? And it was that moment that I glimpsed the true potency of this practice. And you would know that the universe, God, is a trickster and will, give you what you need, not necessarily what you want.
Sure.
And so I began naming my year each year. Throughout that time, I was also working deeply with mythology and storytelling and poetry, and opening myself up to that world as an artist. And so 3 or 4 years in a row, naming the year, wrapping it up, and watching the unfolding of this personal mythology in my life. And so last year was the year of the Fool, and the year of the Fool involved leaving behind everything that I thought that I knew about myself and venturing out onto the road as a traveler, as a wanderer, as a storyteller, opening up to experiences far and wide, and saying yes, a lot of yes. And as this year wrapped up, I felt once again the potency of it as I reflected on the year, and have been offering this as a workshop for the past 3 years. So
Mm.
I felt it was a beautiful opportunity at the festival to offer that on New Year's Eve, and yeah, it was pretty potent, not just for everyone there, but for myself as well.
Mm, yeah, absolutely beautiful, man. Tell me about that year of the Fool.
Yeah. Well, if you or if anyone watching this feels the call to name their year, there is a temptation to name it from the conscious mind, to choose something that perhaps they wish or hope for themselves for the year to come. Many people will reflect on the year that was and say that was a really hard year. Felt like I was, burnt up in flames. And so next year is going to be the year of the rising phoenix, for
Mm,
instance. It makes sense. It makes logical sense. But the conscious mind will intellectualize and attempt to, uh, you know, correct maybe the faults of the last year and create something different. So the year when it does land through this process is going to slap you, and it did for me with the year of the Fool. It's it's not what I wanted. It was quite a scary prospect. Of course, the Fool in the tarot is like card zero. It's like the
hmm
beginning of the journey. It's like uninitiated. It's like
Lot,
right
lot
at
of
the beginning.
blind, lot of blind faith, a lot of leaps of faith, a lot of faith involved with the Fool.
Right. And so it unfolded that way. It unfolded that way from being invited to a festival as a storyteller, to hitchhiking up the East Coast, to saying yes to romantic love in many different forms, to living out in the bush and learning brand new skills, and working with fire, and letting go of a business that I'd run for 5 years, and you know accepting no income other than that of what comes to me through telling stories, and a whole bunch of stuff unfolded in that year that was purely magical. Yeah.
A thing that struck me a bit was when you were mentioning that you had been cooking on the fire for the majority of the year and living
Mm.
in the bush. That's big. That's a big. I think everyone should go through that, or not should, but if people go through that process of reattuning to nature, it will absolutely change the times which we sleep, eat. The all the primal urges that are sectioned into different spaces. I feel like they'll find their own natural rhythm in their own natural space if we're living in that type of circumstance. So it's very, very beautiful to hear.
Mm. You've done some time living
I have,
outdoors.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have, yeah, yeah, a couple of times, man. There was a stretch of about 5 years where I was hitchhiking with a backpack, similar to what you've described, and living and eating and working outside the entire time. Yeah, it was really, really, really potent time in my life.
Mm.
Mm,
Was living in a village. Um, I was a regenerative leadership program, 8 month program. So we were living in a village. It was called Wild School, and so we weren't just living and figuring it all out. We're actually being held and facilitated to learn
mm,
ways of deep nature connection, and learning the customs, the cultural elements that enabled the oldest cultures in the world to
mm,
sustain themselves, and not only that, but to live in a way that care, that cared for the land as custodians of the land in a way that was regenerative and sustainable, that allowed the earth, allowed the mother to flourish. And so that's what we were learning, as well as learning how to be in a village, and everything that goes along with it.
That's like the roles and responsibilities and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and conflict resolution and
Hmm.
what it takes to live with that closely with people for that amount of time. I was also there as when I was filling in the application for Wild School, and I was quite a lengthy application, one of these applications that causes you to question your entire life. And I got halfway down, and there was a question of, what are your skills? What are your skills and gifts and interests? And I was scrolling through the boxes, and then there was a box there, storytelling and mythology. And it struck me that this was the first time that I have ever felt so clear that there was a box there for me to tick. And it's like, oh my God, that like there's something for me specifically. And so I ticked that box, and I showed up with that beginner's mind as a storyteller. And I the quest that I went on was to learn about the function of a storyteller in in a culture, in a healthy society. What is the role? What is the function of a storyteller, and how is it much more than just telling stories? And a beautiful, yeah, it's like I'm trying to think where the quote is from, but I can't recall at the moment. The health of a culture is determined by its ability to sustain a storyteller. And
Well, that's actually a great question about storytelling in our current society. Then, what do you think are the dominant stories, and how do we treat our storytellers in this society?
yeah, well, learning about the importance and power of a storyteller in a village, and the functions, and then you would look around and say, well, we don't have storytellers now. It's part of the reason why things are going so bad. Well, actually, we do have storytellers, very, very
Hmm.
powerful storytellers with a
Hmm.
lot of resources and a lot of reach. And the media is a storyteller. Um,
Hmm.
the government is a storyteller. Um, Movies, films, TV. Um, yeah, we are in the midst
And
of
what
many, many.
what pictures do you reckon the storytellers of today are telling people?
Um, Martin Shaw, who's one of my mentors, brilliant storyteller, he says that in his book Courting the Wild Twin, that good storytellers cast spells and great storytellers break them.
Hmm. Yeah, love that.
So uh, we are a species of story. We are made of story. Story runs through our veins and holds together our bones. Um, and so we have no defenses against stories. If you are in the if you are in the room when a story is being told, it's going to go in. And in a culture that has lost its connection to traditional ancient stories and lost its ability to see life through mythic lenses, to see life mythically, then there are no stories to hold on to ground. And instead, we are left at the mercy of those that wish to push stories onto us or to cast spells, essentially, to hypnotize, and to. And since there's such a craving for stories, then almost anything will be accepted. But what is the
Hmm.
intention of the storyteller? What is the intention of the story itself? Where does it come from? Where is it based? and what are the consequences of accepting these kind of stories into your into your belief system, into your unconscious, which is where the stories go to do their work.
Yeah, I remember in the Russell Brand, I think was the one to say that in the absence of God, what is going to start filling that hole, that vacuum? And often it's a superficiality, materialism, uh, yeah, the lack of meaning essentially is the story, which is not a particularly good story to be telling, is it?
Right,
It's a terrible framework.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, the stories of the end of the world, of
Mm.
collapse, of fear, of the story that humans are the problem and that the solution is the solution. You know, it's like national parks. Was close off the national parks and lock them up and keep humans out so that they can so that they can have a chance to regenerate. But what's where does that lead? Where does that
Mm.
lead when you believe that humans are the problem? Nowhere good, really. You're essentially well, you, you are a human, and you're able to have the thought that humans are bad. So that in itself, that ability, that consciousness, is the gift of being a human, and it can be used for many different purposes.
Interestingly, one of the grander conspiracies is that there is, a group of people that for the last number of hundreds of years want to reduce the population of humanity. So I suppose a story that could be told is that humans are bad, and then the hopeful self-destruction could then lead to fulfilling that particular intention from a few hundred years ago. So yeah, that's a very good point. And yeah, but imagine what would it take then for us to come together and create new narratives or new stories that were empowering for humanity and empowering for the planet and empowering um, for the universe, really, like, and not even just our own planet, but yeah.
Well, we don't have to create new ones.
Mm.
We have them. We have stories that come from the very beginning. We have stories that form the foundation. As far back as we can go, these stories that have been passed down through the jaws of storytellers for generations and generations, which speak to the cyclical nature of life and to non-duality, and to which I know that you speak a lot about, and I'd be interested to hear your comments on that. But these ancient myths essentially teach a couple of core things. They provide a map to navigating the unconscious. They provide a map for entering the forbidden forest, so to speak, the deep dark forest, or and it is a listening to story and listening to myth is soul work. And when I say soul work, I mean that it's down and in. It's not up and out. It's into the deep recesses of the unconscious, right down to the bottom where grief lives. And this is why we use storytelling and myth so potently in men's work, because it teaches men how to access grief and how to transmute the grief through fully feeling into love by going all the way in and spending as much time down there as is needed before returning with the gold finding the gold and returning with the gold, the hero's journey. So these stories tell us that. They also teach us that we must hold the tension between two polar, opposing,
Mm-hmm.
what will we say, two poles. We must hold the tension between two poles, and that, I mean, a beautiful story, The Maiden King, tells the story of a young boy in search of a maiden king, and on his journey he comes to Baba Yaga, and Baba Yaga, of course, is the crone or the witch figure in Russian and Germanic fairy tales. And Baba Yaga is incredibly descriptive prose about what Baba Yaga can look like. But picture the classic witch. They say that she rides a mortar and pestle, and that the hut that she lives in is balancing on a chicken leg, and it spins so that the doorway to her hut is always facing the deepest part of the forest. And there are stakes at the front of her house, 12 stakes, they say, each with the head of a young child on it. And the 13th stake is empty, and that one's for you. And so it's quite an imposing figure to come into contact with. And this young boy comes there to seek information that will aid him in the next part of his journey. And when he arrives, she asks him this question: did you come here of your own accord, or did somebody send you? Did you come here because you wanted to, or because of someone else? Are you here, did you show up for work today because of yourself, or because you're obligated to? Are you in this marriage because of you, or because of them? This question that can be applied anywhere in life, she asked this boy. And if the boy answers either of those as a definitive, if he chooses any side, she just cuts his head off immediately, puts it on the stake. Yeah, right. And this is the energy that we face. This is the Baba Yaga energy that we faced when the world turned upside down for a couple of years ago, and people were choosing these sides of these debates: mask or no mask, black, white, man, woman.
Very much so.
So the media will play that game, and the majority of the people who do not have this deep understanding of what it means to hold the tension between polarities will seek safety through choosing a side. And not only that, but will seek safety in another by demanding to know what side that the other person is on. And when you learn to hold the tension, I know you're loving this.
Yeah, very much so, man. Yeah, just yesterday, I was actually feeling that compassion for the polarization, and that we do have that deep need for community, lack that community, and therefore seek it in ideologies and belief systems that we can share together. And it's like, yeah, it cannot work. It will ultimately fail. That head will get cut off. But I can understand that drive. I can understand that feeling. If we're lacking family and we're lacking community, then we're going to try to find it any which way. And when a person is very strong in their convictions, which is a beautiful thing, but geez, the chances of getting blinded and falling into a polarity is very, very high in those scenarios. Yeah, very much feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how many different questions are there out there? If you start to play the game of choosing sides of polarities in any one category, for instance, anything, you have to do that for everything. You have to choose, like, man or woman, black or white.
I,
Injection or not injection? You got to
that
choose.
that might you might be putting your finger on original sin as well. You know, like this is where we've gone from a simple open space and then slowly but surely gone further and further into the complexity and into the division and into um, the pieces of humanity rather than the wholeness of humanity, man. I think that that's exactly the way that happens. Yeah.
Right. Um, Absolutely. And um, when you hold the space of, you made a post that I really enjoyed, and you were talking about a character, an anime character that first introduced you to the concept
Ashi,
of not choosing
Ashitaka.
sides. Ashitaka.
Ashitaka. Yeah.
What was that from?
Princess Mononoke, Miyazaki film.
Hmm.
Highly recommend. Oh, if you've never seen that, Nathan, fuck,
I
like
haven't
this is
seen
a
it.
very personal thing. Please, on Netflix, the Princess Mononoke.
Princess Mononoke.
Beautiful film, man. And
Okay.
I feel
Thank
like
you. I will.
as a person who is as into meat as you are, I feel like it would be a wonderful thing to check
Hmm.
out. Please let me know. Please let me know after you have
I,
even.
I will. I will. I can feel it in me now. It's gonna. It's gonna. I'm gonna sit down and watch it, perhaps even tonight. Um, so, as a person who chooses that path, it's very affronting to others who cannot find solid ground in you because you will not
Yeah.
choose a side. So they cannot box you in. They cannot label you, and in not being able to box you in, they cannot locate themselves in reference to you.
Hmm.
And that's incredibly unstabilizing, and it's not safe. So it causes these kind of big these infernos that you see bursting, all over the internet, people arguing and whatnot. But I want to finish and just highlight that I've got just a couple minutes left in me.
I know you do. Yeah. I have some comments I want to read before we go as well. So if you
Okay,
could leave maybe 45 seconds at the end as well.
totally. Well, I just wanted to finish that whole Baba Yaga piece because it's quite important. Because there is an answer that the boy gives that enables him to get past the first threshold with Baba Yaga.
Got it.
And so when she asks him, "What did you come here of your own accord, or did somebody send you?" He answers in this way. He says, 85%
I'm losing you, Nathan. Oh no.
accord.
No, not now. Not now. Not at the conclusion of this story. You're freezing up, brother. I don't know if it's from my end or yours. It's like an orgasm that just missed. No. Yeah. Okay. Well, in this time, well, Nathan hopefully is on his way back. I'm going to say that Kate Wright said practicing discernment with any story, especially with the news and those who avidly watch it, absolutely discernment is needed. And a reminder to herself to read. I need to read The Women Who Run with Wolves again. Absolutely. That's an amazing book. I learned a lot from that. Sasha says Nathan's correct about mythology. It appears to be a map left for us to navigate the world. And also confirming that the title is Princess Mononoke for anybody who is interested in watching, in my opinion, one of the best movies in the world. Kate says, darn, this is about, and Nathan is as Frozen. Yeah, so I guess we're gonna have to wrap it up without Nathan. He's not on the stream anymore. If you can hear me, Nathan, thank you so much. That was a lovely conversation. Fuck, I want to know the end of this story though. So I'm gonna maybe just kick it here for 30 seconds, hoping that Nathan will be able to come back on. But if he's not able to come back on, perhaps I'm going to ask him to write That's what I'm going to do. We're going to wrap it up now. I'm going to ask Nathan to write a summary or the conclusion. Doesn't it feel just like an almost orgasm but just missed? That's what I feel like the climax had built to. We were just almost, yeah. Oh, never mind. Thank you so much for the participation from Kate Wright and Sasha. I really appreciate the engagement. Yeah, and thank you so much, everybody, for watching.